Hello guys and welcome to a new Wargame video today by me Vulcan and Val.
Hello.
Today we have the second game of a best of three between the Refugees and Crna Buksna, and this is the last round of the lower bracket in the 3v3 Reddit tournament. And in this one we are playing on Paddy field, and over on the blue side to start off with we have Crna Buksna with Razman, Firestarter and Dirty D, and over on the red side we have the Refugees with Austrian Oak, Barry Dillon and Future Pro. So what are your thoughts going into this game, Val?
I hope this lives up to the wild ride we had last game on Straight to the Point. That was a cracking game. Hopefully that'll be replicated here. But we see the Refugees doing something they seem to have done throughout most of the tournament. And they played blue side on Paddy field, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I believe they've won most of the games they've played on that, if not all of them. But I do definitely think this is definitely a red-sided map, so it's interesting to see what they can come up with to kind of neutralise some of the Red 4 ATGM advantages and various bits and bobs that give Red 4 a slight edge on this map.
Yeah, I think historically, like, the Refugees have actually had a worse time on this map anyway, so that might be why we've actually landed on this map, depending on how the vetoing of the map went. We will probably see the fact that the blue side was aiming for this map in particular because it's a map that's played so often in competitive, and it's something that I'm pretty sure they're very useful and they've practiced it quite a lot. But what sort of decks are we looking at today?
So let's start off with the blue team with Crna Buksna. So we have Dirty D with a motorized rank deck. I say motorized deck. That's the name of his deck. He's got a NATO motorized deck. Firestarter has a NATO armored deck. They're the same decks that we used last map. And Razman is the only difference for the blue side, who's using a Scandi deck, which he's had a lot of success with in the past, and I personally really like that deck, so I'm quite happy to see it played again. On the red side, we have Austrian Oak with a Soviet deck, Barry Dillon with a standard Eastern Bloc deck, and Future Pro with a USSR deck. So quite a standard mix of decks for the red side, and I mean standard for Crna Buksna on the blue side. They've definitely played sort of similar strategies to this for most of their games actually, with one Scandi deck, and then I believe Firestarter usually plays a US deck and US armored, but in this case he's gone for NATO armored. So
yeah, we
meta.
can see actually in this one Barry Dillon has not placed down a single helicopter yet, which must be the first time since the beginning of the tournament that has happened. I probably jinxed it. We're probably going to see him change all of his units now to helicopters. So yeah, well, actually he has a couple of Mi-17s, so I was wrong. But there we go. What can we expect? He does have two T-72 M2 Wilks coming out at the start though, which is very strange. We don't normally see him deploy any ground forces, and maybe it's just because of this map, and maybe they've been talking as a team, like the Refugees have decided to go for something a bit more standard in this game, which might help them control the sectors a lot better, make use of the like Red 4 ATGM advantage on the map. So that is something definitely to look out for. Over on this top side we are going to see what looks like Dirty D try and capture Bravo, whilst in the bottom side we've got Razman sending his Scandi deck to the centre, with probably the use of those RBS 56 squads, which should be able to deal with the Red 4 armour quite nicely.
It definitely can, and the range between Echo and Lima is definitely short enough. Those RBSs are they're not outranged, because the one problem with the RBS is it has the shortest range of any ATGM, I believe, with 2,275 meters, which is the same range as most tank guns for all the kind of medium upwards priced tanks. So they're not particularly good outside of cover, but when they're in a town such as the ones in Echo, they can be really devastating with that 26 AP.
Yeah, I'm loving this composition from Firestarter in the bottom side here. We've got Kai Marishiki, 3 K1s, 2 Chaparrals, a SDRF 9040, and an M3A2 Bradley CFV. That is just such a nice composition of forces in order to push into Hotel and control that open space. And as long as those Chaparrals stay alive, he should be pretty safe against air attack. He's also got the Celtic there from Dirty D looks like he's going to use that to help him at the start of the game, just in case any enemy helicopters come in to try and spoil his day. So yeah, I think it looks like they're going to have quite a good time in the bottom side, especially considering I don't think there is any super heavies coming out of the red side down there. So that is going to be pretty simple for them to outpush the red side. But we're underway, and with the second game of the best of three underway, it should be a good one.
It should be a good one. I mean, I think this is the first time we've actually seen Barry Dillon not play an airborne or motorized deck, which, I mean, I think specifically on this map it might be because I remember he played in this map and had a really bad time. He tried a big heli rush and just got demolished by two Tunguskas near Delta. I can't remember how long ago that was, but I think he's learnt his lessons now and he's gone for a more ground-focused approach. But still, I think he's going to need a bit of help because he doesn't have any super heavy tanks like you mentioned, and he's also not playing the Soviet Union, so he doesn't have access to that MiG-27. So he may have to call in his friend Austrian and Future Pro to send one of those down for him in hotel.
Well, I think they get the variants of the Su-22 M4P, which is the air-to-ground missile plane, so he might have those on his deck. The Su-27 PU there managing to shoot down one of the Celtics, I believe, at the start of the game. Did take a little bit of damage, so that's going to be out of action for a little while. We already see the Scout Defender from Dirty D moving up and harassing a BMP-3 with its rocket pods, although I don't expect that helicopter to last much longer as it gets shot down by the BTR-90. But it does give quite a lot of information to Dirty D about the sort of forces that he's going to be facing at Lima. And down at the bottom side here, Barry Dillon, I don't think he's really seen what's coming yet, but this incredibly strong start out of Firestarter is going to have quite a good time against all of these APCs coming out of Barry Dillon. However, there is going to be an overwhelming amount of 80 gems once those BMPs line up.
That is true. It also depends on how many of these transports are filled with 80 gems, because he might be going for the tried and tested Soviet strategy of having an absolutely ridiculous amount of 80 gems and just locking down hotel from range.
Yeah, well, all these BVP-2s have Conquer's M missiles, so you can see here the volley coming out, and looks like that was actually aimed at the Chugata truck. The poor guy driving that didn't see that coming. But the K1s here, they're doing quite a lot of damage to the transports that were moving into the forest. Now they just need to start engaging these correct units. Like if they basically focus the BVP-2s first, then I think Firestarter can get away with this attack, but at the moment it just looks a little bit too overwhelming for his tanks.
It is overwhelming, but those BVP-2s, or BWP-2s should I say, they weren't microed quite correctly. I think he fired lots of those missiles off at two transports, and they're all now out of Conquer's M missiles, so he just has the missiles from his prams and his ground-based Conquer's M squads left.
It's still enough to sort of make Firestarter hesitant, though. BVPs are going down slowly, though, to the K1 in the tree line there next to the M3A2 Bradley. Over in this middle sector, we did see the RBS 56 squads do a nice amount of damage to advancing APCs and tanks. I think a few T-72As, I think it was, went down trying to attack towards Echo. It seemed that Austrian Oak actually overextended a little bit. As you can see, he doesn't actually have too many forces there at the moment, just 4 squads of VDV-90, BRDM-3 and the T-64BV with the Spetsnaz Screw squad. So that could very easily be pushed through with like the FSK, STRV-103D and so on. But I don't think Razman's quite realised, and it looks like Razman might be heading down to the bottom side with his APCs to cause a distraction there, so that Firestarter can regroup and send his tanks forwards.
He might be, but I can't help but think this is a bit of a waste of these APCs, because they are great fire support, and I think they're just going to all go down to this this Jednotsky squad, and just be a bit waste of the points. But Austrian Oak did have a BV in the middle, which is a pretty heavy 130-point tank. So I mean, I'm interested that he's still trying to push with these VDV, though. I think he should have probably realised that there's a very heavy blue investment between Razman and Dirty D in this Echo area.
In Hotel, MiG-27 came in from Austrian Oak, did manage to take out the Kaimaru Shiki from Firestarter, so that's a massive hit there for the red side. Really good that they took out that tank. It's going to relieve a lot of pressure in this bottom side. Just leave K1s to do the job, which is going to be quite hard for them, unless these K1s can get up and deal with these BMP3s before they retarget onto them.
Well, the BMP3s were they were nerfed slightly. The last patch, the missiles changed from 6 missiles each to 4 missiles each, but I don't think that's much solace to these K1s at the moment because they're very outranged.
Yeah, so 2,800 meter range from the BMP3, and the K1s only have 2,275 meter range, so that's a whole like 525 meter range, which they have to run up and get into range with. So it's pretty crazy, and they're definitely, Firestarter's not going to make the mistake of running into that. But in the middle here, we're seeing Dirty D probing with a few units at the moment. Looks like the FSK squads are running forwards, but it seems a bit futile without any smoke support or any sort of heavy tanks basically covering this advance, because currently the T-72As that are sitting at the back there with their wonderful 4 HE power are going to start chunking those infantry squads as soon as they come into range.
Yeah, I mean, that's just quite an expensive waste of units. Those FSK are 30 points each, and I mean, you don't get that many of them either, so I feel like it's just, like you said, a bit futile, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's just a massive waste out of Dirty D there, and just not being patient, not waiting for the correct sort of composition of forces to make that push effective, and that could cost them in the middle there, to be honest, if they keep playing like that. But at the moment, in terms of conquest points, we are seeing a lead for the refugees once again. They are 60 points up, and that's because they captured India, and Bravo is not captured for the blue side. So we're still seeing like command units coming in, and it looks like this Iltis Kato will get into Bravo, and then that will put the conquest lead in the blue side's favour.
It does indeed, and Firestarter at the bottom has made a regaining of ground, really. I'm surprised that the red team allowed them to get so far forward, but he's managed to capture that tree line, which is really pivotal in holding Hotel, so a good job by him, I suppose.
Yeah, there's still those Lekkerbehotter and the Mostrossi squads left. The Gevarmen there are going to get taken out, and it looks like Barry Dillon's Wilkes managed to do a lot of damage as well. So it looks like the Gevarmen were making ground, but then they ran into the fire support of the red side, and it didn't last too long after that. Got in the centre a cluster munition strike onto the T-64 BEV, leaving that on 2 health, and now some artillery coming in from the spawn. The M270 LRM used by Firestarter. Seems he has a favourite in that unit right there. He seems to be using it in the majority of his games, and if those missiles do land on target, they do a lot of damage. So that T-64 BV down to 1 health now, and it's also left a lot of that infantry in the town, or in the forest, sorry, panicked, which has allowed the FSK to push forwards and start doing a lot of damage to those VDV squads. The SDRB 103D can hopefully deal with his T-72A before that deals too much damage to his FSK squads, because the 4 HE power is just so strong against these units, and also the ZPT U4s there with their incredibly high rate of fire chunking another FSK squad. So 2 more FSKs down for Razman, and he is actually still making ground.
He is still making ground. I mean, I've heard the LRM be called the discount Bertino the past couple of days, but it really is a popular unit at the moment. It's a very nice kind of just a weapon to kind of stun an area like you saw there, which is again a similar role to a Bertino, and it's allowed these FSK just to push into the forest, and there's not really anything there. And meanwhile, while that was happening, Firestarter still managed to regain his contesting of Hotel, which is really big news, especially now that those Conquerors M squads are nearly out of ammo as well.
Yeah, and they are being picked off by single shot rounds from the K1s because they're only 2-man squads, so that's quite important, and for every Conquerors M squad he takes out, it just makes it easier and easier for Firestarter to push forwards. But I think Future Pro and Barry Dillon still have a pretty good hold on Hotel. I don't think either side's going to be putting a command unit in there for now, though. Although a T-72 M1D coming out of Barry Dillon looks like they might go for the armoured cap.
I think they will go for it, but I'm not sure if that's the best decision at the moment. There's a really minimal amount of AA in this area. There's just 2 strops at the back, and if you bring in a cluster bomber like we saw in the middle, it's going to drop its bombs and evac before the strops get enough time on it.
Yeah, the Gevarman trying to get into the forest once again, but again, the T-72 M2 Wilk's going to be there to wipe out those squads very quickly. And those tanks are working out quite well at the moment. They're quite cost efficient, 125 point max range tanks with a 55% accuracy and the 20 AP power. Very sort of strong for their price, and they do hold up well against these K1s because they have much more AP power.
They do, but they also don't have enough AP power to destroy a Recon Bradley that fires while stealthed. Luckily a Crna has just come in now, so that's going to spot the Bradley, but as I say that, it gets pretty much instantly taken out by the tanks.
Well, that Kaio Marishiki just took 3 missiles in a row from the BMP-3, and the MiG-27 coming in. If it lands its second missile, yeah, the Kaio Marishiki is destroyed, and that is another wonderful trade for that MiG-27 to take out that Kaio Marishiki. Also a K1 went down to the BMP-3 HGMs, so Firestarter losing more and more valuable units.
He definitely is, and just as an aside, something that I've kind of been looking at recently is because I know just how frustrating it is having your super expensive tanks being one-runned by a MiG-27. So a small tip is what you can do with the change in suppression for SPAG units recently. If you have a SPAG AA piece, about the same level as your tank, it will generally stun the MiG-27 before it gets a second missile off, which is nice. But obviously, unfortunately, Firestarter did not have one there, and he lost his tank. So
yeah, I also believe this game was played before the patch.
Oh, okay.
So that wouldn't have been in place, but the higher players definitely know about that strategy, so I think in future games we are going to be seeing that more often. The Su-27 PU there going into range of the Noah twice and is going to get shot down, which is a bit unfortunate. That probably should have been evac'd or flown away earlier to avoid the second shot there from the Noah, but that thing does not miss very often. It only has 3 missiles but 60% accuracy, and if it's got any veterancy, then that's even higher.
And it is veteran, so very, very effective unit, and not bad for 70 points either. Yeah,
we see Firestarter's M1A1 trying to probe in the bottom side, but HGM's just holding him back once again, and now Barry Dillon bringing in an MI6 to resupply these BMP3s and the Conquer's M squads, which is going to make it harder once again for Firestarter to make some progress. Although, seeing that MI6 come in, it might give Firestarter a clue that those HGMs are out of ammunition, but since now the MI6 has landed, that's going to be very scary to push into.
It is, and that Spetsnaz Screw Squad just on the corner of the long forest just above Hotel is just in such a good position. It can spot the Recon Bradley, they'll be able to see that infantry CV going in most likely. So a really, really well placed recon unit there is going to really provide some excellent value, I think. Yeah,
the artillery coming in once again towards the compound on the left side of Hotel. Those M270s trying to deal with possibly the MI6 and also the infantry squads in that area. We've got 3 BM24s from Barry Dillon. Looks like those are going to try and suppress some of the heavy tanks out of Firestarter. So after that comes in, it'll be interesting to see if he maybe tries to push with his Wilks and his BMP3s and so on.
Here we go again with the BM24 napalm launchers that we saw last game from Barry Dillon. He's landing that right on the CV and the recon, and that's very, very quickly going to start panicking all those units that are stuck in the napalm. Although actually it looks like they've managed to evade the napalm enough actually. But very heavy tanks coming in with the Kumara and the M1A1, and he's trying to push back, but unfortunately, like you mentioned, those ATGMs are all resupplied, and this could prove very costly.
Yeah, well, the BMP3 is already out of ammunition again, and the BVPs are getting there as well. But so the Kaimaru and the M1A1, they're still very healthy, and they could continue that push. But it seems that Firestarter is a little bit skeptical, keeps driving forwards and reversing back. But if he can take out a few more of these APCs, he might be more convinced to continue pushing. MiG-25 BM, actually brought up by Austrian Oak here. Really quite good seed aircraft. And doesn't kill anything because there isn't any radar anti-air in the area, other than the NOAA, which is out of ammunition and turned off. So that's not going to get targeted, and the chaparrals are holding the skies otherwise.
They are indeed, although we did see K1 go down there to, again, the ridiculous amount of ATGMs that Barry Dillon and Futurepro have on this bottom side. Interesting enough, the red team did resecure Lima, although it's still pretty adaptable to an attack, I believe. I mean, they have some heavy tanks there, but very, very little infantry, so...
Yeah, and there's currently like the +1 lead now for the blue side, since they are capturing Hotel, and the red side is not contesting that. So they've got to be wary that that doesn't get too far ahead of them. The UAZ in Lima also being RT'd by the M270s. So if that doesn't die, then it will be able to move it back in straight away. But if that goes down, then this +2 lead will allow a massive lead to come out of the blue side.
It will indeed, and as long as the blue team has a decent enough hold of the centre tree line in Hotel, that will be quite difficult for the red team to secure. And not just that, but they've pushed into the long tree line just above Hotel as well, with lots of Gavermen, which are a really good, cost-effective Norwegian unit.
Yeah, in this bottom side, Futurepro did bring up a T-80U, and that was engaging with the Kaimari. And it looks like it took 4 points of damage. Another Mi-6, or maybe the same one, has just come back with the resupply. Actually, I think it's the second one. And that should hopefully resupply these ATGMs sooner than later, although it's kind of just hovering there, not doing very much. Maybe Barry Dillon's waiting to use that to resupply the BM24s instead.
I think he is, but I've got to question that really. I think his ATGMs are a much bigger component to his defense really than those BM24s, because if those ATGMs run out of ammunition, then it doesn't matter how much napalm you have. If he just rolls those tanks in, you're going to have a very bad time.
Yeah, and at the moment there's quite a big stalemate really going on. These infantry squads from Firestarter, they're just going to run into this napalm now that's being fired out of the BM24s, and that's just cutting off their approach completely there. Also, we've got to remember that there is still the fire support that can come in from the side from these APCs. They do have those auto cannons still, and the T-80U does have its main gun, so as much as Firestarter Dirty D wants to use all this infantry to push up in this tree line, the tree line's pretty thin, so they can be spotted out by a lot of the fire support throughout the game.
Yeah, I think, well, if there's one thing we can take from this game, is the Firestarter's playing the wrong deck. He should be playing Eastern Bloc, because the amount of napalm that Barry Dillon's been bringing in, should I say, in both these games has been a little crazy. But like I said before, I really think that by prioritizing refueling those over his tanks as a nice MiG-27 run comes in, has cost slightly.
Was that another Kaimari went down? And then, like, the second Kaimari almost got killed as well from that MiG-27. That was pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. The one MiG-27 took down one Kumara, nearly killed the second, then a Syria 30 came in to kill, I believe it was an M1A1, which was a brilliant pickoff.
That's mental, because now Firestarter's down to his last Kaimari. I believe he's got 4 on the deck because it's armoured. So, yeah, that's pretty important, because if that Kaimari goes down, then he's not going to have too much more to work with in terms of super heavies. He's just going to be relying a lot on these Challenger 1 Mark 3s, which still are very powerful, but just not quite up to the same tier as the Kaimari.
And I believe this one is probably going to have a bad time against all these Wilks. Although it looks like both teams are disengaging slightly, pulling back their tanks.
Yeah, both sides being very careful with their tanks. Unfortunately, not much Firestarter can do about MiG-27 runs unless he smokes his tanks, or has, like you said, the spag thing, but that's from the next patch.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's literally all it's going to be down to is if he relied on smoke, really. MiG-27 going down in the middle, though, and also the MiG-25 BM went down, so a couple of important aircraft from the red side being shot down, and it's going to make things a little bit harder for the refugees to make some ground, but a couple of Motorstrelki squads making their way into the bottom side of Echo now.
They are. This has been quite a nice push so far. The BMP-1D, long-time favourite of mine, and I believe yours as well. The grenade launcher, a really good fire support tool. And Buratino coming down on the top side of Echo as well. So we are seeing quite a significant push into Echo from the red team.
Yeah, so we've got the fire support coming up there. The ZPTUs will be able to help finish off those fullscreen Jaeger if the Motorstrelki don't do it first. But to be fair, those two squads the one squad of Jaeger there, that's going to start chunking the Motorstrelki 90 for sure. That definitely outclasses both those squads together. So as long as this engagement continues, it's not going to get any better for the refugees just yet, especially with all this air support coming in from the blue side. Fighting Falcons being brought over Lima, also the Block 5s with the cluster munitions, and it looks like the command unit in Lima is going to go down, so a +2 lead now for the blue side.
Yeah, a nice set of bombing runs, although I've said this in previous games, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of using the cluster bombers over the ATGM planes, because as you saw with that BV, Ostrionok just microed it backwards and it didn't take a single hit, so it can be avoided much more easily than an ATGM plane a lot of the time.
Well, I think what was supposed to happen there was Firestarter and Razman's M270s were trying to stun those units at the same time, but the strike came in just a little bit too late. Now in the spot side, we can see a massive push coming out of Dirty D. We got the XA-186NOs screening against any ATGMs with their larger amount of armor than usual, and that's just going to allow these Gevarmen to run across the field there. Honestly, they're not going to get to this compound very quickly. Could you imagine if those infantry squads were still in those APCs right now? They would have been much better off.
I think they would have been, but I also think the blue team probably expected a little more resistance. I think they're surprised that they got that far, but a Moderna and a T-72BE coming in with this. Here's Barry Dillon. He's gone back to his old ways here, because look at the amount of helicopters he's brought in.
Yeah, two Fighting Falcons coming in though with the 1,000 kilogram bombs will clear out a lot of the infantry in those compounds. Those Mi-17s though, yeah, they're going to do a ton of damage. We've got the BM-24s firing their napalm rounds now directly into the path of the Gevarmen, although they went straight over the top with those volleys. But now Barry Dillon's advancing once again with his T-72 M2 Wilks, and with the 4 HE power, those Gevarmen squads are not going to last very long. Also, Firestarter's Kai Marishiki being targeted heavily by ATGMs from the Mi-24Ws. So he needs to get these chaparrals to shoot those down as quickly as possible, otherwise his tanks are going to be in a very bad spot.
He does have a lot of chaparrals, but they were a bit too far behind the push, honestly, and the damage has been done, and he's being forced to retreat through napalm, which is never a good idea.
Well, I think he didn't lose any of his super heavies. It was just the counter push to Dirty D's XA-186s really, and honestly, I don't think Barry Dillon really got much out of the amount of units he lost, and his T-72 M2 Moderna, they're going down to 1 health from that cluster strike. So,
and a BU went down as well.
Oh wow, yeah.
In that cluster strike.
Big hit from Dirty D, and another Block 5 coming in with more cluster munitions. Will that get the kill onto the Moderna? Yes, it will. So 2 heavy tanks, or super heavies, going down for the red side, and it seems that Barry Dillon's got a bit over ambitious with these T-72 M2 Wilks, has realised it, and is going to start to retreat.
Well, I said before that I wasn't a big fan of the cluster bombers because you can micro away from them, but I guess that just goes to show if you don't micro correctly, then they're even more deadly than an 80-gem plane. So, excellent use of those by the blue team to really do a ton of damage. That I think Barry Dillon noticed and he was moving his Moderna, but that BU was just standing still, just took all the shots and got dropped in one pass.
Yeah, I think the Moderna, I think probably Dirty D just predicted where it was moving, so that's why the cluster munitions landed. The great thing about cluster munitions, though, is that they don't have to be specifically targeted, so that they can drop their munitions over forests and so on, unlike HGM planes could, because they don't have line of sight. So that's one thing that makes the cluster munitions so great. But the BM-24 is firing off once again, and it looks like this time directly on top of that command unit. Let's see if any missiles actually hit their targets. Doesn't look like they will, and Razman's command infantry will stay alive.
Well, I mean, the big problem with these BM-24 napalm launchers is they only have one HE and no suppression, so it's kind of it's not even like a discount Bertino because you don't get the HE damage or the suppression with it. You just get the napalm. So it's good for keeping units from going through the area because it's covered in napalm. But that CV's just found a nice little hole in the napalm and it's just sitting there at the moment.
Yeah, it just creates like an area of denial basically, so the infantry can't move through it. And that's pretty much all they're useful for. Does do a little bit of damage to that command infantry because if you manage to get enough napalm in the same place, it would take a while for the command unit to run out. But another K1 going down at the bottom side of Echo, and Barry Dillon's T-72 is actually holding its own there, working its way towards Hotel.
So if we have a look over in Lima and Echo, there's a big attack coming through, or I say big, but an attack of some kind. He's got these Spetsnaz moving through with smoke behind. Now usually that's not always a good idea because you want your fire support to help you, but in this case they don't really have much fire support, so he's just sending the Spetsnaz in under the cover of smoke to protect against the blue team's superior fire support.
Yeah, it looks like these fighting Falcons though are on the case. We've got I was going to say they dropped their bombs, but they didn't. It looks like they just evac those straight away. So that's going to allow the Spetsnaz to continue and bump into the Gavarman squads and also the FSK there. And we can see a T-72 sneaking in at the back with the BTR-90. So some significant forces moving in, but the STR-B121 should be able to deal with the armor as long as the Spetsnaz are out of the way and they don't stun them. But Spetsnaz obviously won't be able to take out the STR-B121, so this is a pretty safe move now from Razman. We do see the Smirch come in and take out the command unit in Echo, I think.
Yep.
So that's going to remove the +1 lead that the blue side have. But still the blue side on 325 points, which is pretty massive, and this STR-B121 is taking a little bit of damage from this T-72A. Now T-72A managing to get the first shot in there. So the STR-B121 is retreating to be repaired now.
Well, when you have the thing about the Spetsnaz is that even though the missiles don't do any damage, they do have a reasonable amount of suppression against most armored vehicles, at least from what I've seen in the game. So they really so the Spetsnaz can just with the T-72 and the Spetsnaz crew provide quite a threat to that STR-V121, and Razman I think was definitely right to pull that back, but the FSK and the bombers coming in to clear that up.
Block 5 coming in with cluster munitions on top of the T-64 BV there at Lima, and leaving the T-64 BV on 1 health until it goes down to the second strike, and that is a T-64 BV dead, which is pretty important in that middle there because there isn't much left to defend Lima at the moment. Bombing strike is going to come in and take out the command unit in Hotel, so a wonderful job there done by the red side.
A wonderful job, but they really haven't gained any ground. They've been pushed out of Hotel for the majority of the game, and they just haven't really been able to take Echo, even with a few decent tries. But I think this game is just going to be one of those where we've got a stalemate and then just a 1-point tick lead, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that +1 tick is now on the red side, so they are making up some points towards the blue side. And yeah, I think you're right with the whole stalemate thing. Like, this is Paddy Field, and if one side doesn't get a significant advantage at the start of the game, things do tend to get a bit stale. And that's exactly what's happening here, as each side is trying their best to fight backwards and forwards over multiple sectors. But one fighting Falcon going down there to the Su-27PU, and my god, that Su-27PU is lucky. And do you see how many missiles missed that aircraft then? That was insane.
That is just a very lucky PU. You know, there's one thing you can't account for in this game, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the luck of your units, because sometimes it doesn't matter what your ECM is, you'll just dodge every single missile. So definitely a really lucky RNG for the red team there. This attack into the north side of Echo is actually, it does have quite a bit of teeth. It's these VDV-90, very, very scary units in forest. So the blue team has to watch out. They really can't afford to lose Echo, actually, because I believe there is still probably enough time in this game, if there was a 1 tick for the red team, for them to actually come back. So
yeah, but we did see a Block 5 go down as well, and a Mirage. So the Blue 4 losing quite a few aircraft in the past couple engagements. Barry Dillon's T-72 M1Ds taking a lot of cluster shots from artillery on the top side of the map. Razman using those M270s with the cluster munitions to try and take out those command tanks that have been hovering around in the bottom side of the map for a while.
that's another unit that I've seen quite often. I'm still not entirely sold. The damage on it is relatively low, especially compared to the Smirch, but still a nice unit for kind of just forcing units back. And we've seen units force back here. Look at all those tanks that have pulled all the way back from Hotel. They've just ceded this area completely to the blue team.
Yeah, that artillery strike did get rid of pretty much everything in that tree line, and is going to allow Firestarter to make some ground into the bottom side of Lima. He's even got the Kaimaru Shiki all the way up there now, and hopefully that can cover the bridge and stop any reinforcements. If he manages to get any sort of HGMs into those compounds, it's going to make it very hard for the red side to push back towards Hotel, and it might allow them to continue to control this sector for the rest of the game.
I think that's definitely what's going to happen, because we've got these Twilies up here, but now they've ceded this forest away, it becomes pretty difficult to take it back. Especially with the Kimara and the Challenger 1 Mark III there, and unfortunately as well, it looks like this attack from the red team into the north of Echo is just kind of petering out a bit as well.
Yeah, now we see that the tank's sort of coming up from the bottom side towards Lima now. That's just going to take the pressure off this attack entirely, and we might even see Razman move some of his units aggressively towards Lima with the help of Dirty D. Tornado F2 flying about at the moment out of Firestarter, and that's looking for any air targets, but still the engagement happening at the bottom side here. Challenger 1 Mark III just doing a lot of damage to infantry squads and other armour.
No, it definitely is. Like I said, this tree line, once you seed it, it becomes a bit of a risky proposition to retake. But those moat shoots in with the Twadi support have done quite a good job, actually.
Yeah, that Twadi, 9 rounds per minute, does have 22 AP power on its main gun. Nothing to be messed with, really, although this Challenger 1 Mark III is going to have a go. Take quite a lot of damage, but the Mark III does have 20 front armor still, so Twadi didn't do too much damage, and they are being forced back now by the Kaimaru Shiki and the second Challenger 1 Mark III. Got to be careful that Firestarter doesn't overextend towards these moat shoots and 90, as they do have 24 AP power on their heat rockets, so they don't want to get too close to those.
They don't. They also have to be a bit careful of this BV in the top coming in for a side challenge to that Challenger 1 Mark III, but I think that's a bit preoccupied by the Bison's Dirty descending forward to just kind of keep the forces in Lima occupied.
Yeah, I like the use of this Mi-17 by Barry Dillon just to sort of force away this Challenger 1 Mark III, but Dirty D now moving forwards with a lot of Fuchs and Jaegers covering the advance of the rest of his forces, a few Eric squads there. Razman's moving up his XA-186s to distract the enemy as well. And if Dirty D can get some ground into Lima, they can look at taking out this UAZ and extending to a +2 lead again, which is going to make it even easier for them to win this game at this point.
Yeah, we see those Twaddies and Welks, all these tanks, they've been pulled all the way back left of Micah's. I don't think that's where you want your tanks if you're being pushed out of Lima at the moment. I'm not sure if they're giving up or what they're doing at this point, but I'm just really confused as to why they're so far back.
I think the reason for that is because their FOBs have run out of supply. They've been using these MI6s for the whole game to resupply their HGMs and also the FOBs to resupply their Smirches, and it's basically left no repair for the tanks, and that means that all of these tanks that they are retreating are just left on like 2 health and so on. But the weird thing is that a lot of these units that are being pushed forward could easily be attacked by tanks and be completely safe. So it's interesting to see that they are just being brought back entirely when they could still be useful.
Yep, a Vegan down the bottom side in Hotel from the blue team just took out a T-72BU, which is another super heavy tank gun, but this push is just kind of never ending from Dirty D. So many Jaegers and Panzerskites and RXs. I think this is definitely the game for Crna Buksna here. I mean, it's kind of been in their favour since the early skirmishes in Hotel were lost, but yeah, just a very kind of drawn out game, but I think that Crna was always in the lead to an extent, so I guess now they've just managed to push it.
Barry Dillon coming out with 2 MiG-29 912As, the Su-22 M4Ps, and the MiG-25 RBFs to try and do as much damage as possible to some of these advancing forces, but it looks like not really much is going to happen here. It's going to take way too much time for the red side to push all the way back and gain a lead in this game with only 3 minutes left on the clock. Looks like things will be over pretty shortly.
It does indeed, and this has just been. I mean, both teams have had a good performance on this map. I think. I don't think the red team I don't think they played. I don't think they played particularly badly. I think that the blue team just had some really good pickoffs. Like when that F-16 Block 5 came in and killed the BU on the bottom, and then the second one got the Moderna. It's losses like that are really hard to come back from.
Yeah, but at the same time, on the red side, we did see the MiG-27s kill 3 Kaimarishikis. So they were returning the same blows, and I think that's why the front line held for so long, sort of in favour mostly of the blue side, but generally it was a stalemate. And yeah, just not having those Kaimarishikis to push, Firestarter was sort of handicapped there against Barry Dillon.
Oh my god, this is going to be disgusting. Oh,
that big and strike. Yeah, right at the end there, coming in, taking out a lot of those damaged tanks that were sat on the side. But after 37 minutes and 43 seconds, the 500-point conquest win coming out of whoever it was.
Crna Buksna.
Yep, Crna Buksna, that's the one. And yeah, congratulations to them on this game.
Definite congratulations. They played very well. You know, maybe even starting to change my opinion on cluster planes because they had some absolutely brilliant strikes with them in this game. I mean, for Firestar, you mentioned he lost a lot of those Kimarishikis and it was a blow, but he was playing the armored deck and he just kept rolling out the Challenger 1 Mark IIIs, so I think it turned out just to be a bit too much for Barry Dillon and I believe it was Austrian Oak down on that side, or was it Future Pro, to deal with. And just a well played game, quite a standard game from both teams really. Nothing particularly crazy, but in the end, Crna won out.
Yeah, I think it mainly came down to the fact that as soon as Barry Dillon ran out of supply, all his HGM units were useless. All his tanks were like half health after the engagements with Firestarter, and Firestarter having that armored deck, having the availability on the Kaimarishikis, because normally on a standard Blue Dragon or like a standard Blue 4 deck, you just see like 2 Kairi Marashikis, and then once they're taken out, that's fine. But with an armored deck, you get 4 of them, and that just makes things so much more difficult because you don't have the MiG-27s.
You do actually have 4 of them in a standard deck.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, you have 4 in a standard deck.
Oh, okay. Well,
2
there
cards.
you go. some information there, but yeah, I think that's mainly what caused the discrepancy, is just the availability of tanks from Firestarter and the fact they weren't using so much supply on resupplying 80 gems and so on throughout the game. Those Challenger 1 Mark IIIs can just sponge so much damage, and they don't even cost that much, so that's just another reason to add.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's about all we can really say. It was kind of a game that was won earlier on, I think, and just it's not that the red team were losing for a lot of the game. It's just they weren't winning, if you know what I mean. And then it just kind of got too far. And then the push came in at the end and just did a lot of damage.
Well, with all stalemates, it all comes down to the fact that one side runs out of resources, and in this case, it was the red side that lost out first. But yeah, like I say, that's all we can really say about this game. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.
Bye.